So season 1, episode 1 of our do-it-yourself DIY Kansas public land hunting. He's new into this. I've got about 20 years of experience hunting Kansas public land. Just kidding.
I think that's the other way around.
I've got 1 year experience, but what we wanted to do is break down everything that we're doing this year going to Kansas. Fingers crossed that we actually draw. Some people didn't last year. Yeah. But we've already been a couple times this year looking for sheds, scouting. He's been multiple times. But we wanted to break down how we found the properties that we are targeting specifically. So it's really easy to kind of get carried away and just pick 20 different properties, what you want to see. We're going to break down about 10 ideal properties that we find on the map and take 2 weekends of going over those places. In the end of it, how many properties do you think we'll really focus on and put cameras in out of, like, say 10 or 12 properties?
We'll probably focus in on about 3 or 4 and spend our time. Spend our time on those.
And when we say properties, that could be WIHAs, that could be just public land in general, like WMAs or anything in Kansas. So it's not necessarily, we're not hunting any private in Kansas. It's going to be all public. So now we're going to break down. OnX is our biggest tool for that. We're going to go in our unit. Well, kind of. We're not going to necessarily show you our unit, but we're going to show you what we're looking for in another unit, of how we would look at this unit and decide what properties we're going to actually go put boots on the ground. So we're going to X a ton of properties right off the bat and focus in on, say, 10 or so. We'll show you 3 or 4 of our favorites just right off the bat. So some of the things we're looking at in these WIHAs are we're basically anything that you look at and you think, I don't want to go there, that's a good reason to look at it. On this specific property to the west of it, there is a huge walk-in hunting area, and that's going to be a primary spot for every out-of-stater, anybody coming in to look to hunt public. They think they're going to get away from people. So we're kind of looking at some of these smaller properties that look like nothing, but they can be hidden gems.
Yeah.
And that's what Rusty's kind of seen in the past.
Yeah. So this one here, it's kind of an outlier from that big one. You got a huge drainage system coming in from the north. It's got a couple of ponds on it, so water's not a problem. But especially during the rut, these bucks run these drainage systems, and I've seen it in the past. You don't have to have a lot of timber, but you look at this big picture right here, and they're going to be traveling that drainage area. They're going to be running does, looking for does all up and down through here. So that's kind of what I look for, is what's around the property. Just because the property doesn't have a certain thing on it doesn't mean it's not going to be good.
So even though there's these ditches right here, how would you set up? So you see the ditch forks there, that's a creek or something there, but how would you set up on something like this?
Yeah, that fork would be a good place to set up, because, I mean, you're doubling your chances. If they're traveling these ditches right here, you got bucks coming down this one, bucks coming down that one. If you can set up, it's a good place to set up with a good wind on this fork right here, that's going to up your chances.
There's not a lot of timber here, so you're looking at sitting on the ground somewhere on one of where this meets?
Yeah.
Because this is probably going to be taller.
Most likely there's probably not going to be a tree to set up in, so you could set up on the ground. You can make a natural ground blind, or you can carry a ground blind in there. But
another thing to think about is you got the crops down here.
Yeah, you got big crops over here. That's what you want to look at, is the big picture.
Yeah, so that is one of the smaller properties that's definitely going to get overlooked because there's no timber, and it's mostly just ditches, creeks, and whatever. But it's surrounded by, it wraps around a crop field.
Yeah.
So another property, not that one, another property we liked, once again, looking at the big picture and the whole unit, just trying to find some outlying properties that may not get touched. You've got these big properties here that are all bunched together. You can bounce back and forth really quickly, which usually would be a huge bonus, but that's what everybody's seeing. Everybody is seeing the same thing you're seeing, that there's a huge WIHA or multiple WIHAs back to back to back to back. We like hitting these ones that are a little bit further out that people don't want to go to just because they're not close to anything else. If you're going to go here, you're dedicating your day.
There's a lot of acreage down there, but I like looking at these ones that are isolated. They tend to get overlooked.
And the roads don't matter.
No,
I mean, roads
road ain't
do
gonna
not
matter.
matter.
So looking at the big picture on this one right here, again, you've got a big drainage coming in from the north. You got like a small lake up there. It's a creek bottom. It runs right into the northeast part of this property. And I mean, they're going to be traveling that. I mean, it's just a huge travel area. And also, there's a lot of CRP on this property. This property also has 3 big bodies of water on it, so water's not going to be an issue. They like to bed up in this CRP, and then they'll come down to these creek bottoms and they'll start searching for those. And
Also like these little areas down in here in that CRP.
Yeah.
Those little openings down there in the bottom.
Yeah.
That you could set up anywhere in these little forks. Any kind of timber coming off that creek.
There's even like on this creek bottom here, you see a little isolated patch of timber right there. They'll be bedded in and around all that. Plus, you see these topo lines right here.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a pretty good bank right there.
There's a bottom right there.
Yeah. So they're going to be down in there chasing. They're going to be bedding up in here. So you just need to find you a spot to intercept.
And then below it, I mean, you talk about bedding. I mean, this is going to hopefully be a huge travel area coming up through there. That should be a ton of bedding. There's water. And then, like you said, you've got a huge draw coming up through here on that creek bottom. And then
over here hid, you see a small patch of timber right over here hid. Don't overlook areas like that.
That's where you've been finding a lot of sheds, just little patches.
Yeah, I found a lot of sheds in and around areas like this. Don't overlook that right there. I mean, that right there, and then there's another piece right here.
Which is a little draw coming through there.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised what those areas will hold.
So this is like the third property we picked out. And like I said, the first thing we look at is where are the biggest properties of WIHAs, like the biggest chunks, the biggest areas where they're close, close, where you can bounce around properties. We're looking for those outliers. And this is another one that really caught our eye. Probably our favorite one, not that one. I mean, stop clicking. Actually, that looked amazing. It's just not legal to hunt.
Yeah.
But this is probably one of our favorite ones. It's pretty far away from everything. There's a road right next to it, so some people are going to think it's too pressured or whatever. But when you really look at this one and look at all the CRP to the north, there's a lot of things going on this property that it doesn't look like much.
Yeah. I mean, from the road here, people driving by, they're not going to see a lot of this stuff that's out in the middle of this thing.
Yeah.
And again, what I like to focus in on is these huge drainages, because I know from experience, these big bucks, they chase does all up and down these drainages. I mean, it is just constant. So
and that drainage starts way up here and then works its way down.
These bucks are going to travel 4 or 5 miles during the rut.
Yeah.
But this property also sets up really good. It's got a couple of ponds on it. That drainage has a couple of branches that branch off up into some CRP, and that's really good areas to find sheds too. I found some really nice sheds on a property that was almost a carbon copy of this. And up there, these drainages go up in that CRP and they kind of just fade out, and those bucks,
like right here,
they'll just kind of bed out in that CRP. And that's really good places to find sheds, and I was fortunate enough to find a few.
Notice there's almost like a little line that comes up through there, little tree line coming up through there.
You need to look at that dim stuff. Don't overlook, dim lines like that. Edges, fence lines, stuff like that.
That's the other thing you like so much about this one was that fence line. That's one of your prime areas of finding sheds.
So the adjoining property to the north here has some good hedgerows, looks like coming in from the north, and it just kind of fades into this property.
Right there.
And you've got some curves. You got a 90-degree right there. I bet you that would be money right there.
You got water too.
Yeah.
That's the north property. Yeah. So obviously you can't see everything on the map, which is why we use it to highlight or X off so many properties. We try to get the ones that look good, that aren't obviously noticeable to most people. When we get there, everything changes. There's different things like the water level rising up and down that we noticed when we went this last weekend. One of my favorite spots was a spot that the water level would come up to almost like a levee. Yeah. And me and Rustin had found some of the biggest rubs that you've ever seen within a 100-yard span. It was all on almost like a levee where the water level had come up last year. And you saw all sorts of spots with scrapes, and most people don't think they scrape this time of year.
We found some fresh scrapes last weekend, believe it or not.
March. April, March. Yeah.
A little bit unusual. They use scrapes year round, but pawed out on the ground, that was a little bit unusual. When you locate a good property on X, when you get there, it's going to turn out a little bit different a lot of times than what you're expecting. So it's going to be, it could be a cattle farm. But I mean, even if it's a cattle farm, I mean, that don't completely exit out of the equation. I mean,
But you
I've
don't
seen a
know
lot
until
of-
you get your boots on the ground.
Right.
I mean,
right. You got to get boots on the ground. I mean, this helps us locate properties. But once you get the boots on the ground and you start seeing the lay of the land, you start looking at the sign. That's why we're going now, is to find, you know, postseason sign, because that tells you what was there in the fall.
well, one thing we did before we went was we all picked our favorite spots on Onyx in our zone.
Yeah.
And there was one property that every one of us had marked, and it was all our favorite property.
Yeah.
We got there, and it was, I mean, a desert land. There's all sorts of timber. It was thick as can be. No deer sign. Nothing but cattle sign. There's cow patties everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's a property that every out-of-state hunter is going to see that doesn't come up there and put boots in the ground. They're all going to think that is going to be the property. And there may be a time in the year that it is.
So
you can't completely exit.
We exited out of our properties, and you know that's what it takes. I mean, once you get boots on the ground, I mean,
It's not a priority property for us right now.
right? Yeah, it's definitely on the back burner. So we moved on pretty quick, and it was good. I mean, we found
Some of the properties we didn't think we were going to like on Onyx
that
that were still ones we wanted to look at, but we didn't think they were going to be as big of a player as that property was. Ended up being our number 2 or number 3 property.
right. Yeah,
Rustin didn't like those. We'll keep queuing that. He didn't like it. But Rustin thought it was a bad property. We get there, and first thing he said was, okay, this is a little bit better than I thought. It was 2 drainage ditches that came down, nothing but CRP in between. And there's really nothing there to it. There's nothing to that property.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of deer sign and a ton of beds.
a lot of deer sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so our next episode on our YouTube Kansas series is going to be more about putting boots on the ground. We did some filming when we went last time. You found some sheds. We found some awesome rubs, scrapes of all things.
Oh yeah.
A lot of good sign. And this is going
beds.
to transition right into trail cameras, which is when we're going to drag him out there and have to, you know, get him put up in a hotel and put our trail cameras up for us.
Yeah.
If you don't know it, Rustin's one of the best at putting trail cameras up I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But after we pick out the primary 3 or 4 properties, we'll have Rustin come out, we'll get some wild game cameras up, and focus in, try to find our top 6 or 7 bucks in Kansas, and then you're looking at putting stands up. So
Yeah, we're gonna start fine tuning.
we've got about 2 weeks. Oh, we got turkey hunt.
Yeah, we got turkey hunting coming up in 2 weeks. So
Maybe
we'll be
find some more
turkey hunting and shed hunting and doing more scouting.
All in Kansas.
In Kansas.
Yep.
They're going to be like, who is that back there? Anyway, so next episode y'all see is from the last couple weeks of us walking. We'll get that put up, and then we're going to get right into trail camera season. We get them up early, and we do the whole velvet growth. It's going to be awesome. We're excited.
Early and
This will be the
often.
most cameras that we'll have in Kansas up, and I mean, most of y'all put Wild Game's really come through strong for us, and we'll have a ton of ton of social media content with all of our videos. If you don't follow us at, it's so weird not saying Whitetail Warfare, but you know, United Outdoors, Instagram, and all of our trail camera content goes there.
Yeah.
And
It'll be
that's all,
loaded.
that's all she wrote.
Chicka chicka boom boom.
End on that, I dare you. I just got bit bumps.
Yeah, it's got it. Boom.
Mosquito. No. Yeah, Rustin's private
use it
property's
every
gotten
day.
permission on lately.
I use it every day.
Rustin just asked that he's just a poor kid wanting to hunt, and they let him hunt.
Yeah.
Weird.
I did send a
They don't
picture
want
of
him in their
myself.
house.
He says, I'm so poor, we got to feed the cat.
Oh man.
Oh,
So
my
put
God.
that in the video, but just bleep a whole sentence out. We're so poor that bleep.
You never heard that saying?
That's definitely a Derek's Arkansas.
Oh man.
Way back.